Okay, so as I said, for the practice, you might need something that serves as a strap. So finding a belt, a shawl, and then we'll do a back bend with a block. But instead of a block, easily you could use also a fold-up blanket. So having those things handy. And then we'll just take a moment, seated, whatever seat works for you, and then we'll be actually lying down for the first posture. And let us just pause for a moment. The eyes can be closed, the eyes can be open. What I'm playing with today in the practice is this idea that this idea of tenderness and kindness towards ourselves. It's been something that I've kind of needed to remind myself over the last weeks that, somehow it kind of is easy to extend that kindness to a good friend, but sometimes it takes a bit of practice to extend that tenderness and kindness to ourselves. So let's see how we can play with that in Yin. So what we'll do is, as you sit here, feel into your spine and the uprightness of the posture, as we often do, finding that alignment where the body kind of can organize itself in such a way that relaxation becomes kind of more and more possible. And as you sense into this uprightness, can you also find a sense of softness, however much is there right now, without that softness meaning that you completely collapse. So feeling maybe the back line of the body and the muscles on either side of the spine, and just seeing how much softness is available there. And then scanning through the front line of the body. And similarly, just kind of lingering for a few moments around the heart center. Around the navel center, the belly. And what we softening away from is this kind of effort and pushing and trying. So let us notice if even kind of taking on this theme or this task, or if we kind of outline, like this is the theme, is there a hint of, oh, I need to do this well? And just notice if that arises. And then if it is there, if you are like me, that I just want to, like, whatever task I give myself, I want to do it well, then hold that part of yourself tenderly and kindly. That's what I mean, that anything that arises, whatever reaction or kind of part of ourselves that tries to manage the experience one way or the other, all of those aspects of ourselves, can we hold that kindly and tenderly. Tender is especially the word that kind of has been resonating. Give it another moment. And we'll be tuning into this over and over again throughout the session. So as we lie onto our backs from here for the first posture, just having your belt or whatever you're using as a belt, having that handy. And on the back, you're going to bring the right thigh to your chest. And you can start with the left foot on the mat, so the knees bent on the left foot as well. And whatever you're using for a strap is going to go under that right foot, around the sole of the foot. And the right knee can be bent. It doesn't have to be all the way straight. And can you play with now this yin concept or this yin principle, that just let yourself come to a place of a mild sensation at the back of that right leg, but keeping the muscles relaxed and not needing, like I could come a lot deeper if I use force, but that's not my practice today. My practice is tenderness, kindness, and really kind of finding that place where, yes, there's stimulation, but it's mild and I can soften around it. And you could stay here with the left foot on the ground. That tilts the pelvis in a way that makes it easier for the back of that right leg. So if you have a tighter hamstring and you know that, then keeping that left foot on the ground might be a kinder option. Otherwise, feel free to experiment. You could also straighten that left leg. And then make sure that you feel the shoulder blades down on the mat, so I'm not eagerly stretching up the hands towards that foot. There's no goal in actually getting to the foot or the toes. So I feel my arm bones kind of heavy and dropping down towards the ground. And it's just a little bit of a weight of the hands that is pulling that leg, whatever angle it happens to be at. And you can experiment. The knee can be bent, or the knee can be straighter and the leg is at a bit of an angle, so it's doesn't have to be all the way 90 degrees. So whatever is available to your leg right now. And we'll be here for about another minute or so. So take your time to kind of feel the ground underneath and see if you can find some nourishment of the ground in kind of finding the sense of a connection to the ground, and then this way of letting your body weight sink towards it. Notice the sensations at the back of that leg. And again, how is it to be in this space? Is it easy, or is it hard, or is it somewhere in between? How is it to be here with no ambition? Like there's no target out there that you know that you need to get to. There's no specific way that you need to kind of accomplish this posture. For a moment, just see if you can sense, is this readily available for you to simply be here and soften away from trying and effort and trying to make this right or perfect in any way? And if you struggle with that, then hold that struggle kindly and tenderly. Now give it a moment here. I want to give you a choice now. You could stay here for another like 3-4 minutes, or you could come to a forward, like a stretch for the back of the leg in a forward fold, in a half butterfly. So just take a moment. This one, I would say for most people, this one would be kind of an easier option to stay here. But notice that here you're not really affecting the structures of the spine. And so make a choice for your body, for your energy level today. So if you want to transition to a forward fold, you're going to hug the knees in, gently roll over to one side. Send that same right leg forward. Bend that left knee, let it drop out to the side, and then slowly. So you've stimulated that back of the leg a little bit already. So coming and rounding the spine forward, letting the head drop, using whatever support you usually want to use in your forward fold. So right leg is forward and left knee is bent to the side. Yeah, exactly. I have a little bit of a sensitivity in that left knee, so I'm always putting a block underneath it, and that takes care of it for me. The variations of props would be to have your folded blanket be under that right knee, so the knee is slightly bent. And then some of you might enjoy a variation where there's something under your forehead. So take a moment, let there definitely be this, again, this moment of kindness and tenderness as you tend to the body, and you again find that place where, okay, I'm feeling a stimulation along the back of the leg, and now we've added, if you've come to forward fold, you've added the whole back side of the body. But you add a place where you can soften. You add a place where you're not forcing. And again, what you're softening out of is a certain rigidity that things need to be in a certain way. And you leaning towards the experience as it's arising from one moment to the next. So again, a good practice ground here to notice any self-talk that arises. And again, if you're anything like me, then often when we do these practices and we become more and more self-aware, then I tend to get hard on the parts of me that I know that are kind of those patterns that are rising, and I kind of tend to attack them a bit. And so yin can be a good place when any of that reactivity arises, any kind of more stronger reaction arises, rather than trying to get rid of that or breathe it away or soften that away. Can I hold that part also kindly? And like again, like as you would hold a baby, a child, as you would tend to a very dear friend, and go, I hear you, I hear you. So we beginning to reclaim this power of tenderness and softness, the yin side. And leaning towards this softness, openness, and also often that includes vulnerability, tenderness. Give it another 3 breaths. If you're on your back, then you stay on the back and you could release that right leg. And in a moment, those of us who are in a forward fold, we're going to join then others on the back. So you're going to unravel. And then we'll take a moment on the back to feel the rebound. So we're in the posture, there's certain sensations in the posture. And then in the rebound, we get the juice of the practice. Here's also a chance to maybe sense a little bit more like the subtlety of your experience. And again, that state of receptivity and openness. Last week we played with sensing the sense of like spaciousness inside the body and outside the body, this open-bodiedness, so to speak. Again, for a moment here, just sensing, noticing this moment. One of the things that we soften out of is our defenses. What would it look like if we are able to soften out of needing to be right? Because that always takes us again kind of out of the moment into concepts. And then we'll take the opposite side. So we'll start similarly taking the soles of the feet onto the mat and taking now the left foot and using your strap or strap-like object, threading it around the ball of the foot. Again, a few times you might move the foot a little bit closer, a little bit further away, investigate the sensations at the back of the leg. And then make your choice. Do I keep the sole of the right foot on the mat? Or do I straighten that right leg out? Are there any associations that come up for you when I say tenderness? Just notice, do you already have some connotation, some sort of resonance that that word and the idea of being tender with yourself, allowing for tenderness and softness, because often that's considered a weakness. Whereas it's actually within the tenderness and softness that I find lies our connectedness. We'll give it another few breaths here, but we're coming to that mark when you are making a choice. You don't actually have to do the same thing on both sides. The body has a remarkable way of organizing itself, but so give it a moment here. Do I stay or do I include the back line of the body and maybe a little bit more stimulation also for the back of the leg as you transition to a forward fold? So letting that strap go, if you're doing that, hugging both thighs to your chest and then rolling over to one side, curling up, and then right away transitioning with the left leg coming forward. Right knee dropping out to the side, and then taking your forward fold. Half butterfly. So when I talk about reclaiming softness, reclaiming tenderness, it means, reclaiming yin. In that yang dominated world, one of the teachers that I follow, she uses a term that we live in yin deficiency. So it's all about action and producing, and now the whole world has been kind of forced into this yin, into this pause and gap between how things used to be and kind of being in that unknown of how it's going to continue, what the future looks like. So letting ourselves kind of be in this gap. And so let us soften internally, while there's also softening in this practice externally, as we call for the muscles to relax as much as possible, calling them down to the ground, into this little moment of surrender. And so we can better see like what's calling now, what's present now. And it's as simple as noticing the breath flowing, and in this moment your heart is beating and your blood is pumping and your food is getting digested. And see if it's your experience as the outer becomes more still and pauses. Let's say the outer in this practice case is our body coming into a more stiller place, then the inner kind of realm becomes more palpable, more visible. And sometimes that in and of itself is a tender place to be. And then we're giving it another few moments. If you're on your back, then feel free to begin to release your leg. And again, just let's take a little moment there, staying on the back. And if you're in the forward fold, then slowly walking yourself up and taking yourself onto your back as well. So a short pause here, and you know it. You can keep the legs lengthened and straight, take them as wide as they kind of naturally want to go, or you could keep the soles of the feet on the mat, the feet a bit wider, and the knees resting against each other. Let's give this again a moment to be in this place. Again, another pause, another gap. Not trying to fill it. So softening out of needing to produce. Needing to come up with the next thing or do the next thing, just for a moment, let yourself just soften, ground, breath. And then again, the softness, tenderness, what is able to soften out of that rigidity and hardness a little bit more, just simply by being here like this. And then I want to offer a similar thing. So we're going to step the soles of the feet onto the mat. And again, there's an option to stay on the back, and there's two variations of this. So there's a threading the needle pose, the ankle coming over that left knee, right ankle over that left knee, and the left thigh comes to your chest. So right hand from the center, left hand from the outside. So the target is where we want to feel it is the right buttock. So that's one option. On the back, the second option would be the shoelace on the back, which means that I continue crossing that right thigh. So it's not only right ankle, but it's going to be right thigh crossed over. And then both knees come to your chest, and you either interlock the hands around the top knee or both knees. And we call it the shoelace on the back. Some people can hold onto their feet and hold the feet. For me, that's not comfortable. Or we're going to come to a shoelace from a seated variation. So again, usually the back variation can be easier. So if you know that it's the hips that are more on the tighter side, or you just feel like the nourishment for the ground today is the most tender and kinder option you can take, then you stay on your back. Otherwise, we're going to, again, either roll to one side or rocking up and taking the right thigh over the left thigh for your shoelace pose. So shoelace or Gomukhasana, you might know it from your Hatha practice. So again, either staying on the back and working your glutes on the back. So it's mainly the right glute that we're targeting. Or coming up to your seat and taking a seated shoelace. What's, if our intention or the lens that we kind of moving through the yin today is tenderness and kindness, like what shape carries that for you? And so tender, like that, sometimes choosing a more fiercer option could also be what you just need right now. So I'm not the idea is not to hold you back, but to have this inner conversation with yourself before you choose. And if you're in the shoelace variation sitting upright, it's totally up to you to stay more upright or explore what happens. Again, the target area, the buttocks, the outer thighs, what happens when you lean forward. For most bodies, that increases the intensity, but I've also heard the opposite. So everyone's body's bones are different. And once more, we eventually come to a still point. So once the outer pauses and softens, more of the inner world awakens. And you're not looking for anything with a magnifying glass, but just simply noticing what arises, what's here now. So the whole practice about being in this relationship with your inner experience. And so we play with that idea of having the right effort from one moment to the next in our practice. So again, cultivating this keen sense of kindness towards all aspects of you as you make your choices. And then what if tomorrow, like when you need to make a choice, you pause for a moment and you kind of look at your choice through this lens. What is the right effort right now? We have about 3 or 4 more breaths. And then we'll meet everyone on the back. So if you're on the back, release your legs. If you want to make some movements, then you could take the soles of the feet onto your mat and make a windshield wiper movement. If you were seated, then you take your time to unravel. And again, similarly, as you lie on the back, you either stay more still. The windshield wiper movement is where we take the feet on the mat, take them a bit wider, and then collapsing the knees from one side to the next. So it starts to loosen up the lower back, and then it also gets into our hip joints. So you're moving between internal rotation, external rotation. Again, what's the right amount of effort? What would be this keen sense of kindness toward yourself as you make these decisions? Small ones on the mat. Your life doesn't really depend on those, so it's good to experiment. And then we'll set up the opposite side, so it's going to be on your back, either the threading the needle, left ankle over the right knee, or crossing the left thigh all the way over, so it more resembles that shoelace pose. For me, it creates a lot of compression here in front of the left hip, and for me, that's pinching, and that's not kind. Otherwise, so choosing a seated variation with the left thigh on top. So anatomically speaking, each posture, it has an area. We call it the target area. So in this particular posture, it's the buttocks, the outer thighs. If you're in a seated variation, you might feel it on both sides, maybe more on the top thigh, the left thigh. And if you're on your back, it also depends which variation you've chosen. Either it's more on the, or only on the left side, or on both sides, if you're in that shoelace variation. So that's where we're primarily looking to feel the posture, looking for sensation. So spend a moment kind of noticing that. The buttock area, the outer thigh. Obviously, if you're in a seated variation and leaning forward, there's sensation along the spine. And as I mentioned, if you are in the shoelace and you're leaning forward, if you feel a lot of discomfort in front of the hips, then you're probably in compression. And if it's uncomfortable, pinching, sharp sensation, then that you don't want to hold. So then either walking your upper body a little bit higher, finding a different variation. So these are just some physical aspects of the practice and a way to make sure that you're showing that kindness, softness, tenderness to the tissues of the body. Making micro adjustments if you need to. What brings more kind of sense of this ability to soften? And really check this capacity you have to stay present moment to moment. As that for me is really also kind of the gist and core of the practice, embodied moments, mindful moments. And then through that, developing that capacity to sustain your presence. And then we'll slowly release, and one more time we'll take a rest on the back. So we'll join the others and give it about a minute for the rebound. Again, more softening. Feeling the ground, feeling the breath, feeling the weight of the body. All those are gateways to this being in this moment in a embodied way. Slowly, slowly creating a habit out of that to check in. And then we are all gonna hug the knees in, and we transition by rolling to one side or rocking up to your seat, and then changing the legs towards the back so you can come to all fours. And just for a moment, a few cat and cows, and it could be micro movement, it could be bigger movement. Can you again sense, like, what is the amount of effort that works for you right now? Move with breath. I'm wanting us to come to a back bend next, and we have two options here again. So we could come lying down on the belly and do a Sphinx pose, which all of you know, coming onto the forearms. And the variations of the Sphinx, everything is welcomed as you tune in. You make your little modifications. And also, a saddle pose is a back bend. I don't teach it very often, especially through the online medium, because there's many areas of many joints involved that people have problems with. So it's basically either sitting on your feet or sitting between the feet and then lying onto your back. Might mean that you only can come onto your forearms, or you might need a cushion or a pillow, or maybe you have blocks, then blocks work as well. If you have a bolster can work. But a lot of people feel discomfort in the ankles. You might feel discomfort in the knees. You might feel that it's too much for the lower back. So if in doubt, just come onto your belly and come to the Sphinx pose, which anyone can do. If you are choosing saddle, then just because I can't see you, I'm going to say any type of discomfort that you feel around the knees, come out of it. All right. If you feel that the ankles are getting squashed, then having a rolled blanket under the ankles could be something that you can play with. And as I said, there's a variation to sit on your heels and move back, or to sit between the knees, between the heels and lean back. So know that saddle option is there. Some people really, for some bodies, that really works very, very well as a back bend and as a front body opener. So then feel free to take it. If you are in doubt at all, then come onto the belly and join us in the Sphinx. So we're targeting the lower back area, mild sensation, kind of like a pressure, we call it compression. Again, if there's anything sharp, very, very localized, first thing to try is to move the forearms further forward, so you're not arching the back as much. And you could place something under your forehead. If there's not much sensation that you feel in the lower back, one of the first things to do would be to bend into the knees and notice if that changes. If you have a pillow or blocks, you could bring them under your forearms and see what that changes. And then the final variation is where we bring the palms down and we straighten through the elbows. So I'm going to encourage you to be in that conversation with your body. And again, notice if you want to change, less sensation, more sensation. But see if you can keep that lens of tenderness, kindness, ability to soften as a way to make your decisions today. Maybe always, but especially focusing on that right now. And then make it personal to you, like in order to maybe access that tenderness, what are you softening out of? So I named rigidity, needing to be right, softening out of this mindset that there's a goal or kind of a certain like need to accomplish. What can you soften out of as a way to be more kind and tender? need to improve, need to fix. I definitely can soften out of needing to be in control. About 1 more minute. Sometimes the kindest thing to do is to come out of the posture earlier. So again, just notice what your reaction was when I said 1 more minute. And then slowly let's release onto the belly, and this time we'll take the rebound here. So face down, or one cheek down, letting the legs flop. And if you're in saddle, then very, very carefully starting to walk the palms back, and so you can bring your elbows down and slowly begin to bring the body up. And you could come to child's pose. We'll join you there in a moment. So if you're on the belly, just a couple of more breaths here. If you need longer on the belly, if that feels like the best place to stay, then please feel free. We're going to come to child's pose and spend about a minute in child's pose. Unless as you come up to all fours, you feel like you want to do some cat and cow and movement for the spine. So that is also an option. So we have some of you staying on the belly, some of you bringing some movement in, and some of you coming into a child's pose. You could be thighs together if that works for your hips. In that way, your spine is going to round more and open into that area in the lower back that was compressed. But for some people, for some hips, this is where they come into a painful compression. So then play with taking the knees a little bit wider. And about a minute. Again, another moment to just integrate, either in stillness or in movement. Three more breaths wherever you are. If you're on the belly still, begin to transition towards child's pose as well for just a couple of breaths. Then pressing your hands onto the ground and just coming up to sit on your heels. And so this is where you might need, if you have a block, you'll place a block under the upper back. I'm going to use today a mild variation of this posture. Sometimes you can think of it as a yin fish pose. So I'm going to just lay the block on its lowest end. There is a variation that uses it lengthwise, and then you could also have it on its highest end. But I'm going to just stay in that tender place for me. But instead of the block, if you don't have a block, you could also take a blanket and you could roll the blanket. And again, if you roll it up and the roll becomes very thick and that feels too much, then you can always just unroll it a little bit. And where we put that stimulation is at the back of the heart. So it's the bottom tips of the shoulder blades, more or less. It depends a little bit how long your torso is. Women know where your brow line is. That's approximately where it goes. So either the block or the blanket fold. And feel free to adjust it, but it's not under the lower back. So we just created a kind of a back bendy situation in the lower back. So now I'm aiming to create it more higher up in the spine. My head is going to come down on the other side. And if you feel like your head is really tilting back and it's creating discomfort, place a pillow, unless you have a second block, and that could be under your head. My shoulders are going to be a little bit above the ground as I use the block. Hands can go to the sides and open, and then soles of the feet could be on the mat, or you could send your legs straight. So you're elevating your heart slightly higher, should still feel comfortable. Your lungs are going to be a little bit more open. Breath is going to move to the sides and to the top. And the inquiry here could be like, how does that tenderness, that softness relate to your heart right now? So if you connect to that space in the upper chest, there's a saying that tenderness allows heart. It means connectedness and heart when we allow ourselves to be tender and soft and open. But again, the idea is not to impose a certain state upon you, but more is like wherever you at, whatever arises during this practice, can I hold that with kindness and tenderness? And a powerful practice can be usually embodiment practice. We don't really connect words to it, but I have a embodied like a dance teacher who's bringing that in every now and then. Yes, we're letting the body express what's going on, but every now and then speak a word. And so just as a practice, you don't even have to speak it out into the space, but that can be super powerful. But are there any words that come as you kind of put a word to what is it that you notice? Could be as simple as I notice breath. If you're experiencing the weight of your body, say that, the weight of my body. Just one or two words that speaks to your experience. Let's give it another 3 breaths. begin to step your feet onto the mat, one foot at a time, and then slowly beginning to roll over to one side. So whether it's a blanket or a block, you just kind of curl to one side and then release. If you have a blanket, then you could actually stay curled on that one side. If you have a block, then release that from your back. Stay on that side for a moment, and then we'll slowly rise up to a seat, and we'll finish with a forward fold. In my sequence, I have a butterfly, so soles of the feet together, but equally well, you could take both legs forward, so you could do one forward fold for the whole back line of the body and coming into what we call a caterpillar. Or if you want to work more and include now the inner thighs that we haven't really touched in this practice, then you could take what we call a dragonfly and coming forward. So your choice of symmetrical forward fold, symmetrical meaning that both sides of the body are doing the same thing. So we'll settle in. Again, work from that angle of tenderness, even as you negotiate that edge. A metaphor from a plant cycle. If we look at the cycle of the plant as this representation of these different energies that we go through, then the plant kind of being in that most yin state would be when it's in a seed in the ground, dormant, in the darkness. And that's a really, really important part of the cycle. And as the seed starts to sprout out, that sprout, the time we're in right now, the springtime here in Europe, the sprout time is that time of tenderness and vulnerability, where there's a sense of wobble. And often when we are in that phase, whether with a project or in our life, in that place of a wobble, that tender place, we kind of want to really hurry through that and go into that, next cycle would be the full expression, the flowering. And when we say we live in that young dominant world, is that we're expected to be in that full flowering state all the time. And that is not the nature of life. There's that wobbly part, that tender part, where we're not quite sure yet, where we have our root down in the earth, but we kind of don't have that full strength yet. And we need kind of to really honor and protect and allow for that stage. And then comes the flowering, comes the young, and after flowering, again, another part that we really are not comfortable with is the rotting, the composting, the decay that comes as a part of the composting, taking apart, which is the very fertilizer of the ground from which new life arises. So here we leaning into that tenderness, sense of vulnerability, as we allow ourselves to soften. And again, in this context, it's really just, it means to turn and hold what's arising with kindness. It's more as we soften out of attempt to master, improve. as we slowly release onto the back and into Shavasana, then I'm going to finish today's class with a Yoga Nidra. So that's why we're finishing a bit early. So we have about 15 minutes for the Yoga Nidra for the relaxation. So as you lie onto your back, make it extra comfortable so that you feel that you have the padding underneath, under your head. Maybe you warm enough so that you can lie on your back comfortably for 15 minutes. And if that's not your cup of tea right now, you could also, again, as I said, end the practice here, either turn off the sound of the device or leave the meeting and maybe do a twist and Shavasana. So totally okay that as well. So Yoga Nidra, you could think of it as like a guided relaxation that uses a specific technique that kind of allows us to soften into a liminal space, a space where we're not fully asleep, but we're also not fully awake. And traditionally that is considered a very, very healing place. It's basically you kind of dropping beyond your mind and allowing the healing capacities of the body to take over. So you'll receive whatever it is that your body needs, and if you fall asleep, then that means that that's what the body needs most right now. So you are following the sound of my voice, but you're not kind of trying to be a good vigilant student and kind of follow the instructions, but really trust that this practice is working on a part of your consciousness that hears me even when your thinking mind can't. So really trust the process here. And we start by simply kind of becoming aware of the body as we've been doing the whole practice, and the breath of the body. And more we're coming to that place where there's nothing you need to do. Let yourself begin to kind of become a little bit more aware of that outer, the senses, kind of noticing the sounds that are arising. Maybe they are rising closer to you in your own apartment. Maybe you picking up sounds that are coming further away from the street. But see if you can let the sounds kind of wash over you. And they are rising within this awareness, and you not trying to label them, name them. You're the inner witness. There's a sense of calm and observing your body, breathing, the breath flowing as you are aware of the sensations of the body. And take simply 2 rounds of breath where you allow the breath and the top of the rib cage and the back of your lungs. And you empty out completely. Just 1 more breath like that. And then letting the breath become completely effortless, happening without you needing to control it. And let yourself bring your attention to the crown of your head, the very top of your head. Just awareness of the crown of the head, feel it relaxing. Maybe sense it softening. And then bringing your attention to the eyebrow center, the forehead. And again, just a moment of pause here and see again if that place between the eyebrows can soften, even if just a little bit, the softening, a widening and opening, relaxing around that space. Then travel down and feel your throat, feel the throat from the inside, awareness of the sensation of the throat inside, maybe even a swallow here to soften it more. And once more, just attention, awareness, and then just a degree of softening, opening, relaxing. Your attention travels down and finds the heart space, the center of the chest. And similarly, kind of allowing a breath to move into that area, the awareness, and then a softening or a sense of opening, relaxing. Then awareness travels down to the navel center, the belly. And similarly, just a couple of breaths you spend with your awareness there, inviting in, softening, relaxation around the navel, inside the belly. And then moving all the way down to the very base of the spine. And then widening that focus and feeling the whole basin of your pelvis, your internal organs and genitals, and also a softening, a relaxation, and opening. Then move your attention momentarily back towards the navel, awareness back towards the heart. And then from the center of the chest, the attention moves to the right shoulder, down to the right elbow, to the right wrist, and then the fingers on the right hand, awareness of the thumb, index finger, middle finger, ring finger, and little finger. Tension moving back along the arm, and then you sensing the energy awareness moving through that right arm. Momentarily coming back to the center of the chest, and then over to the left shoulder. Moving down to the left elbow and left wrist, awareness of the fingers on the left hand as you become aware of the thumb, the left index finger, left middle finger, ring finger, little finger. Back up along the arm and that energy back to the breastbone. Once more we travel down to the navel, to the base of the spine, and then over to the right hip, to the right knee, right ankle, the top of the right foot, the sole of the right foot, the toes of the right foot, right big toe, second, third, fourth, and fifth toe. Awareness like a wave swooping back along that right leg to the right hip, and then feeling the whole right leg, sensing the energy awareness moving, vibrant. back to the base of the spine, and then over towards the left hip, to the left knee, to the left ankle, and the sole of the left foot, the toes of the left foot, the left big toe, second, third, fourth, and fifth toe. Again, the tension moves like a wave back up along that left leg, feeling the whole left leg vibrant, full of sensation. And then again, just for a moment, back to the navel, awareness goes back to the heart, back to the throat, third eye center, eyebrow center, crown of the head. And now imagine like a wave from the ground, descending down all the way to the toes, like a wave that relaxes every cell of the body, and then toes all the way down of the head. Imagine that wave brushing down, relaxing, releasing, softening, opening, down from the ground to the toes, to the soles, and then back up through the whole body. Couple of more times, letting that wave move through you. Bringing more and more relaxation, more and more softness, tenderness. And then for a moment, let yourself simply rest here. Simply being. Being present and welcoming this space of awareness where everything can rise like a wave, where life arises, where experience arises. Simply aware. Flow of breath, flow of energy, heartbeat arising, all of that arising inside awareness. As you once more tune into these full body sensations, the awareness of the body is also arising within that space of awareness. As you allow for a deeper breath, simply first consider a possibility of movement. Begin to feel towards the center of the body. Maybe it's the navel, maybe it's the spine. Let your awareness spread from there towards your extremities, your fingers and your toes. And then take just very small movement. Fingers, maybe the thumb brushing over the tips of the fingers and toes slightly moving. The practice of Yoga Nidra is complete. See if you can savor this transition from inward to outward awareness. And if you need longer time here on your back, then please take it. If you're ready to start that transition to a little bit more upright position, make that also a gentle journey as you maybe continue moving in subtle ways, small ways, or rolling over to one side. Eventually curling up to your seat. I might have lost some of you for sleep, so then I'm just going to let you be. And I'm going to finish here by bringing the palms together and chanting one Om. So if you want to sing with me, please do. If you're still on your back, then enjoy your rest there. Going to empty the breath out and then drawing a breath in to sing. Om.